It's the Brian Lehrer Show. I'm Kusha Navidar. I'm filling in for Brian today here on WNYC. So as some listeners know, when I'm not hosting here, I co-host a public radio show called Climate One. It's about solutions and stories as our environment changes. And lately, we've been talking a lot about solar power, and I think that may be of interest to New Yorkers and beyond for Health and Climate Tuesdays. As the world gets hotter and electricity becomes more expensive, a lot of people have been turning to solar panels they install. The idea is that the solar panel will capture energy during the day when you're often using the most electricity, and the utility company can buy excess energy you produce during that time from you. You benefit in savings, the grid benefits in stability, and the earth benefits with lower emissions. That's the theory, anyway. Today, states are making it harder to save money with this design. Over the last decade, in fact, according to my next guest, more than a third of U.S. states have changed the rules, allowing utilities to pay homeowners less for that excess energy. And for a lot of people, when it comes to buying solar panels today, the math is less attractive. Here to walk us through what those changes are and what they mean for us, for utilities, and for the planet, I'm joined by Francesca Paris, a reporter for the Upshot from the New York Times. Francesca, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
So nice to have you in the studio with me. I want to start at the heart of your reporting. So across the country, states are changing the rules about how a utility company can buy back power that somebody generates with their solar panel. And you talk about a shift from what's called net metering to net billing. Is that the crucial shift to focus on?
Yeah, so when you generate energy with solar, you use it in your house. But because you're using electricity all day and you're only generating solar when the sun is out, you have sort of an imbalance between when you create power and when you use power. So you'll actually often have extra power in the middle of the day. That goes back to the grid, and states and utilities can decide how much they want to pay you for it. They are paying you less in a lot of places now than they used to.
And so is that less because of a shift from net metering to net billing? Is that right?
Net metering is what we call it when they pay you effectively the same rate that you pay them. So in New York, that's something like 30 cents per kilowatt hour. We have pretty expensive electricity, similar, a little lower in New Jersey. And they give you one-for-one credits that electricity you send them in the middle of the day offsets what you use, say, at 8 p.m. after the sun is down. Under net billing, they pay you a lot less. It varies. It can be 2 cents, 10 cents, somewhere in between. Depends on the state, the utility, but they give you less back. So it's not one for one. All the energy you're giving them does not actually necessarily offset the rest of the electricity that you use.
So let's break that down a little bit because there are numbers there. I want to make sure that I'm getting it right. There's net metering and then there's net billing. Net metering is the more favorable for the consumer. It's basically the utility company is taking whatever electricity it wants and the value of it is how much they would charge you for it, right?
Yep.
And then with net billing, it's some rate that the utility company decides on. You don't have control over it, and it's generally always less than what they would be charging you for.
Yeah, it's always less. The states sometimes set a specific amount. Sometimes the utility sets an amount and the state approves it. In some places like California, it's actually a different rate depending on the month, the hour, the day that you send it back.
So how much savings is the typical person missing out on if their utility company shifts from net metering to net billing?
It depends on a ton of stuff. It depends on how much solar you're generating. It depends on how much you use and how you use it and when you use it. But it can be hundreds of dollars. In some cases, it can be thousands of dollars less.
Okay, so that's a big spread there, hundreds or thousands. Do you see this having a significant impact on people adopting solar panels, or is it more just like, it's not as good as it used to be, but it still makes sense?
Well, when you decide to get solar, you can do it for the environment, and some people do. A lot of people do it to save money. Mm-hmm. So they're thinking about the cost of the system and how many years it'll take them to pay off the system and how much money they'll make after they've paid it back. So if you're making less money each year, if your payback period goes from 5 or 7 years to 15 years, then yeah, you're probably less likely to install it in the first place.
Oh, because it's such a big upfront cost. Mm-hmm. I hear you. Listeners, we want to hear from you too. However you land on this. Maybe you've had solar panels for years and you've watched what the utility pays you change? Has that impacted how you think about home solar moving forward? Or maybe you looked into installing panels and now it doesn't feel as attractive. How have you thought through the economics of solar panels or solar panels generally? Give us a call at 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. So, Francesca, there's been a narrative for a while that it can be smart to put up solar panels, but many utility companies have been simultaneously trying to decrease their own costs of buying it back. I mean, you cite an article from 2017. This has been going on for a while. And over the course of the past decades, states have started to switch to net billing. What is compelling the states to do that, to follow the utilities' desires in that sense?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, utilities want to pay you less in general because often in the middle of the day, they have other ways of getting power that are cheaper. They have their own power plants. They have, in some cases, in some states, a lot of solar energy that they can get from like large-scale solar farms. So they are finding, especially in places where there's a lot of solar, that solar is actually just worth less in the middle of the day. In California especially, you have so much solar that sometimes on some days they are essentially throwing away extra energy. So to buy it back from you at a rate of 30 or 40 cents per kilowatt hour when they could get it from their solar farms effectively for free, they're basically saying the value of the dollars we're giving you isn't what that energy is worth. And that's the case they've been making. And they've been making it for a long time. I mean, Hawaii was the first state to end net metering. That was back in 2015. A bunch of other states have followed. It's sort of been a long-running debate that often puts utilities against customers and of course, solar installers.
So if it's been going on for a while, is there any sense of whether this shift is like immediate, or has it been just state by state? It's kind of falling in line over the past decade and a half, I guess.
It's state by state, and states do it very, very differently. I mean, some states keep net metering but add on fees. Some states get rid of net metering, but they will pay you a relatively high rate. So they'll still give you maybe half of what you pay or even more. So it depends on the state. It's very slow. And typically, if you've installed solar before they make a change, you get grandfathered in. So there are a lot of people in a lot of states that went away from net metering that are still getting net metering because they signed up early.
What is the way it works in New York? Do you know?
New York is a really great state to install solar. So is New Jersey. You still effectively have one-to-one traditional net metering. Most of the electricity you sell back will be credited at the retail rate.
Okay.
And it's also a state with expensive electricity, so that,
that's a good thing. Yeah, right. No, it's not a good thing, expensive electricity. It's just like beneficial that it's net metering with some caveats.
Absolutely. Yeah. New York has made one change, and that was to move a little bit away from net metering for larger projects. So for community solar, which is where you pay a little and you get back some discounts on your bill, and other large projects for just homeowners, it's still net metering. They do now add a small charge, a customer benefit charge, depending on the size of your system, which can add up for an average system to maybe $100 a year. The rate has gone up a little since they started it in 2022. So that is an example of how states, even if they keep net metering, are reducing your profits as a homeowner a little bit. But for the most part, New York and New Jersey are still one-to-one net metering states and good places to install solar.
Wow. Okay. Go New York, I suppose, and New Jersey in that sense. If you are a consumer who wants to save as much as you can on your electricity bill. Let's go to Mike in Portland, Maine. Hey, Mike.
Good morning. You know, I'm a huge fan of solar, of home solar, but net metering is something that really can't work and should never have been installed. And let me explain why, especially in the state of Maine. In the state of Maine, the utility company does not generate electricity. They only deliver the electricity, and a consumer can purchase electricity from anybody they want. And the rate for that electricity that you purchase, this is the supply cost, is about 12 to 19 cents per kilowatt hour, depending on what company you choose. But then the delivery rate from this utility is about 12 to 13 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's a total of, let's say, 25 cents per kilowatt hour. With net metering, the individual that's generating the electricity at home is getting their 25 cents per kilowatt hour. but they're only supplying the electricity. They don't have to pay for the delivery. The delivery costs the utility company the same amount, whether it's traveling from the home to the grid or from the grid to the home. So they're making a fortune on it, and the ratepayers are actually paying, regular ratepayers are paying for the amount of money that the home generators are getting because they're paying the full rate, and the people that are generating their own electricity are getting double the amount of what they're making. They should be paying for the grid, for the delivery, because they are delivering it, and the utility company still has the expense of supplying it and moving it across their lines.
Mike, thank you so much for that call. So well put, I have to say, too, because this is a complicated topic, and the narrative that might be easy to assume about net metering good, net billing bad, there's more nuance there. And Francesca, I want to hear what your thoughts are, but to kind of sum up what Mike was saying here, in situations where the utility company is is delivering energy, not generating energy, it could be economically unviable for net metering. Did I hear that correctly from Mike?
Yeah, Mike, that was great. You want to write my next article for me? Maine's actually an interesting state because they removed net metering very briefly and brought it back. So a little bit of ping-ponging, but that's exactly right. I mean, and that's the case utilities make. If you have one-to-one net metering and you reduce your bill to essentially just whatever your monthly fixed charge is, maybe you're paying $10-15 a month, you are paying less to keep up the grid. And you still use the grid. I mean, you're using the grid at night, you're using the grid anytime that the sun isn't out. So utilities are saying basically that solar customers raise the rates for other customers because they're not paying their fair share of delivery and transmission costs.
It's important to note also that this shift is happening across the country. And for me, when I was reading your article, I was wondering if there are trends we could point to, whether that's political leanings, population, economy, even what Mike was describing about with the way the utility company works, that kind of determines whether a state shifts from net billing for home solar panels.
It's a great question. And the answer is that a lot of different states are doing it. At first, some of the early states to end net metering were states like Hawaii and Arizona, places with a lot of sun where solar grew pretty quickly. So it did map in the beginning onto places where there was more solar, more sun. At this point, states across the country are doing it. States with less sun are removing net metering, states with pretty small solar markets. And then states like California, where there's so much solar, are doing similar things effectively. So it's not just happening in blue states or red states. It's happening in states like Maine, where utilities are mostly responsible for sourcing power, not generating it, just getting it and giving it to you. And it's happening in states in the South, like Louisiana, where the utility is responsible for every step, so generating the power and getting it to you. There's sort of a widespread movement away from net metering.
There is a listener that just texted a perfect question to segue the conversation. So Julian from Northvale, kudos to you. The question is there a way for the consumer to store the excess electricity generated during the day for use during peak hours? Francesca, that's the question I was going to ask, so go ahead.
There is. It's a battery. The big movement in the solar industry now is toward putting in batteries, because if you can sell your electricity back at, say, 3 cents, but it costs 30 cents, then you're better off keeping it in your battery, using it at night. So it's still effectively worth 30 cents because you're not buying from the utility. Batteries are also expensive. They're kind of a new technology. Home batteries are a relatively new technology. There's a lot of installation and permitting costs around them, like there is with solar. There's other ways to store energy in the day. If you don't have a battery, you can pre-cool your house. You can run your AC a lot while the sun is out, and then less after dark. You can use your laundry machine in the middle of the day if you work from home. But for the most part, the solution to this problem is batteries.
But it sounds like it's expensive.
Yeah. I mean, solar is already expensive, especially in the U.S. Batteries are pretty expensive. They're getting cheaper. There's some programs that will help you get a battery with a rebate or a discount, or even for free if you participate in certain programs. But they are expensive. I mean, they're not just for financial benefit. There's a lot of places where you might want a battery because of an outage.
Sure.
So there's a lot of reasons that aren't just money to get it. It also, of course, helps the environment because instead of using energy from the grid at 8 p.m. when all the gas and even oil plants in New York turn on, you are still using your solar energy. So there's a lot of reasons to get one, but they don't necessarily pay themselves off yet. They are getting cheaper.
Let's go to Ethan in Sleepy Hollow. Hey, Ethan, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Go ahead.
So, you guys have pretty much already covered what I was going to talk about, but I should also mention for anyone who's worried about the utility company pulling a rug on them, which I was when I bought my solar panels about a year ago. I signed a 20-year contract with Con Ed to make sure I get that one-to-one net metering for the life of my solar array. So I was really worried that they would pull the rug on me. And then, yeah, like you guys were saying, the other thing I wanted to say was, if you are worried about that, if you're not getting one-to-one metering, then a battery is definitely a good solution to save that.
Ethan, do you have a battery installed as well?
You know what? I didn't install a battery because I have the one-to-one metering.
I see. If you had not had the one-to-one metering, would you have gotten the battery, or would you have just foregone solar panels?
Well, it depends. I would have gone for a battery. However, some of the rules in New York, the rules for code, require you to put a battery in a fireproof enclosure, which would have cost even more to install a battery in my house.
I see. So there are these extra infrastructure costs even beyond.
Exactly. It's not just the price of the battery, but it's the price of installing it and the price of permitting it and all that.
Ethan, thanks so much for that call and for sharing your experience. Francesca, do you have a sense of how the costs here are? Like, can you give me a ballpark range even, and how it might compare to other places that other countries, other continents, even Europe? I'm thinking.
Well, more expensive than most places. Solar here has come down over the last decade, 15 years. It's come down a lot. If you put in your solar panels 20 years ago, you were paying, 3 times as much as you might now. But it's still about $3,000 per kilowatt. You see different estimates. Some people put it at $2,500. Some studies are around $3,500. But, for an average house, you're talking about $18,000 to $25,000, and if you have a bigger house, more than that.
Oh yeah, so it's a huge upfront cost there.
Huge upfront cost, and you used to be able to get a chunk of it back, almost a third of it back from the federal government through the tax credit, but you had to install it by December 31st of last year.
How does that compare to other places? Like, if somebody moved, would they be able to get batteries and solar more affordably?
Yeah, I mean, if you really want solar, move to Australia.
Interesting.
It's around $700 per kilowatt, US dollars, something like that. Extremely cheap. They put up extremely fast. That's why there's a ton in Australia. Also, they have a lot of sun. In Europe, it's a little more expensive. I've seen quotes from maybe $1,200 to $2,000 US dollars, but still much cheaper than it is here. And Europe has expensive electricity, so, on par with us in New York, with California. So you're paying less and you're getting it paid off in a shorter period of time.
Interesting. Let's go to Bill in Brooklyn. Hi, Bill. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hi. Go ahead.
I had solar panels installed maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago, something like that. Almost recovered the initial expense over that time. I live in a 2-family building in Brooklyn, and I don't get anything for the. I've given away 10,000 kilowatt hours of excess electricity to the grid. And I don't get anything for it, except for the fact that I suppose the delivery, they're getting my delivery costs paid for by somebody else. Is that right? Is that my understanding correct?
Francesca, I think it sounds like Bill is saying he's given 10,000 kilowatt hours back, hasn't seen anything because of it. Does he have that right?
Well, thank you, Bill. I actually don't know specifically your situation, but I think one thing that you're pointing to is that even if you're not making money on the excess solar, even if you had no net metering, what you are doing is offsetting your own use. And if you use a lot of electricity and you pay a lot for it, over time, that can be a lot of money, even if you don't get anything for the extra. And the other thing that Bill is doing, and anyone with solar is doing, is keeping down costs of the grid in general. So when you generate solar, it just goes straight to your house. It doesn't have to go over the wires. There's no losses. It reduces peak demand. So say during a heat wave, we don't have to send you any electricity from the grid. You've got your own. You're generating your own at 3 p.m. when it's really hot. You are running your AC off of your solar, which makes blackouts less likely, which keeps down grid maintenance costs. So there's a lot of value in solar that you are giving to the grid that you may not or may not be getting credited for, depending on how you're getting paid.
Yeah, Bill, thank you so much for that call. And Francesca, something that just came to my mind that might be worth pointing out as well. When we talk about grid stability, my understanding at least is over the past couple decades, the enormous pressure on the grid has really outstripped what people thought it would, right? Like there is an enormous amount of pressure put on the grid across the country in all different situations. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, we had a long period of relatively flat electricity demand. It wasn't growing a lot, in part because we made houses more efficient. We switched to LEDs. We, used less electricity per person. But we have entered a period where that's no longer the case. We are using more electricity. Part of that is EVs and heat pumps and clean technology. Part of that, of course, is data centers. And that means there's a lot of stress on the grid. And a lot of solar advocates point to solar as part of the solution for this because, say, take the last New York heat wave. The state estimated that the amount of distributed solar it had around New York reduced the peak demand by 8%. It saved something like $200 million across a lot of customers. But that's sort of one argument in favor of the value of solar is helping reduce how much energy you need to send through the poles and wires, which means you don't have to upgrade them, which means you save money.
It feels to me like net metering was built kind of for a different earlier era when barely anyone had solar, and now it's almost too successful for the system it was designed for. Is that a fair read, or is it still too early to say it's over?
Yeah, I mean, it depends where you are, but that's exactly what it was for. Solar was really expensive 20 years ago. The panels especially have gone a lot cheaper since then. And net metering was basically a way for you to be able to pay off that big investment. And it did a really good job of encouraging solar growth, especially in places like California, where I think they generate about 10%, maybe a little less of the electricity they use over the course of the year from just behind the meter home solar. So I think one of the arguments in favor of net metering is it just makes the math better. It makes people put them on their houses. It increases the amount of green energy. In some places, you don't need that anymore. In California, they said pretty explicitly when they ended it, we have done enough to encourage solar. It's flourishing industry. They don't need our help anymore.
Last question before we wrap up here. I'm curious, do you have rooftop solar?
I live in an apartment with a very funny old roof.
Yeah.
No, I don't. But I did. I grew up with rooftop solar. My parents had locked into the original net metering. They now use a lot more electricity because they have an EV. And so they want to upgrade their system. But of course, if you make changes to your system, you get typically kicked off of whatever scheme you're on and you get onto the one that the state has now. So it's a complicated set of sort of incentives. It depends if you want to increase rooftop solar, if you want to make costs fair across the whole electricity system. There's a lot of things at play.
So do you feel like your reporting has changed your perspective on it?
I think if I owned a home, a dream for New Yorkers,
right.
I would get solar for all the other benefits. I mean, at the end of the day, some of these large-scale clean energy projects are really hard to get up. They take a long time. They can be canceled. They can be postponed. Rooftop solar is not necessarily easy, but it is a much faster way to just sort of increase the amount of green energy on the grid. Would I do it for financial reasons? I mean, you just have to run the numbers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it sounds like those numbers can be different in many different circumstances. We'll have to leave it there. My guest has been Francesca Paris, a reporter for the Upshot from the New York Times. Thanks, Francesca.
Thank you.
WNYC's journalism and storytelling is heard by millions of passionate listeners. Sponsors of our programming gain our listeners' attention and their respect. Learn about how your organization can support WNYC and WNYC Studios at sponsorship.wnyc.org.